What is going on, Steelers Nation? We are officially off the bye week. Massive game with playoff implications on the line here for both squads. 6-2 Pittsburgh Steelers, 7-2 Washington Commanders. Both these teams leading their respective divisions. Now we're going to preview this matchup just like we always do. Look at the positional battles, stats, schematic trends, all that stuff. But I just want everyone to appreciate where we are in the season. We are in the midway point of the 2024 regular season. This is, in my opinion, undoubtedly the game of the week across the NFL. And I think I'm just extremely hyped up to watch this one. And I'm just trying to appreciate the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers are involved in a game that's viewed like this. This has been, gotten a lot of media coverage this week, and it's cool to kind of be back in the mix because both these teams are kind of looking to, break into contender status as we get further into the regular season. Just before we get started, please make sure you like, subscribe, drop me a comment, give me those score or bold predictions. I'm going to be giving away another t-shirt. I'm feeling generous from our channel sponsor, Homage. So if you get the score right, you might get lucky, win some merch. They just dropped a bunch of new designs. I actually just got me a couple t-shirts before the holidays. But regardless, like with the holidays coming up, please make sure that you use the link to shop, help support the channel, all that good stuff. And without further ado, let's ride. First things first, let's roll with the injury report. Steelers, pretty healthy coming into this one. Pretty good looking injury report. Obviously, it's getting some guys back. Most importantly, Zach Frazier, Ryan McCollum. He battled while he was in there for a couple of weeks, but getting Frazier back, who I think was really on his way to having like seriously a Pro Bowl caliber rookie season, which is very, very rare for an offensive lineman in general. Getting him back in the lineup is going to be a huge boost, especially this week. But I'm just really excited to see, hopefully he's 100% healthy. It seems like he's going to be. Excited to get him back in the lineup. Some other guys making their way back into the lineup this week. Cordero Patterson, Michael Pruitt, both those guys are off the injury report, no game status. Justin Fields, he was the emergency quarterback, I think, the last time that we saw the Steelers play, but he's off the injury report as well. Maybe some potential Wildcat stuff in there. The only guys that really are like have a injury status, Ben Skowronek and Tyler Matakevich, both those guys are currently on IR, but they did fully practice this week. We'll see if either one of those guys gets called up right after I release this thing or whatever. And then the other, like the only notable player I would say that's actually like worth discussing is, Nick Herbig is out. He was a limited participant early in the week, and then he was a DNP on Friday, and they went ahead and ruled him out. For Herbig specifically, those soft tissue injuries can be really tricky. It seems like they're just trying to be really cautious with him and that he has a chance to go next week. Hopefully that's the case. Of course, like I said, hamstring, kind of a little bit tricky, but that leads us to the next player, Preston Smith. Sounds like he's going to play, and I think that he could actually get quite a few snaps in this one just because, especially with the way that the Commanders like to play, they like to use a lot of tempo. They're the number one no-huddle team in the NFL, so you're going to want to keep those guys fresh as possible, and this is a game where I think he can kind of be a little bit more of an asset for you in general than maybe most weeks just because of some of the things that he can do with his body type. In different things, I actually think that, he's probably a better run defender at this stage of his career than Nick Herbig is, so going up against this Commanders offense, I think that it would be nice to have that particular skill set. I didn't get around. I just kind of ran out of real estate. Didn't get around to recording the Preston Smith film room this week. I may drop some clips either on Twitter or on the channel, whatever. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet. But overall, I went back and watched this film last year. Was fairly impressed. I think he's definitely a rotational player still at this stage of his career. The tape this year hasn't been nearly as productive. You can definitely tell that he's not fully comfortable in the scheme. They scaled back his playing time, but I still, really everything that I said on the reaction video earlier this week, and you can go back and watch that. I'm not going to rehash everything. But like I said, I do think that this dude is like very clearly still a rotational player. I don't think that he's lost like so much or just completely fallen off a cliff this year, like his numbers may indicate. But I think getting him in a reserve role to where like he can keep some of the other guys fresh and like he's going to be surrounded, in my opinion, by a better group up front, which should also help his like per snap numbers. He should be more well rested, energized, all those different things, and he's going to be playing in a scheme that he was clearly like, he said he requested a trade. They got him here. He wants to be here. I'm excited to see what that looks like. I think the main thing for me is, it's kind of tough because the second half of the schedule, we talked about this earlier in the week, but this is it's a brutal second half. Like it's a lot more difficult, especially at the offenses that they're going to face down the stretch starting this week. The Commanders really the number one offense in the league, in my opinion, right now. but they need to get TJ Watt snap count under control. Like 92% of snaps, man. Like I know he's highly compensated, all that stuff, and he's great. It's tough to take him off the field, but you don't want to run him into the ground. Like hopefully with the way the Steelers are playing, it seems like they got a really good track right now to the playoffs, trying to win a playoff game for the first time forever. You want that dude like still remotely healthy, and I think they need to scale that back just a little bit. He's playing 92% of snaps. Just it's an unreasonable amount. The only guy who like ever like really plays like that amount of snaps is like Max Crosby, and he's just like a psychopath. And the Raiders never make the playoffs, so you ain't got to worry about that. But I think for Preston Smith, it'll be good. It'll be a good debut. We'll see what he's got. Maybe if he, makes a couple plays, maybe we'll look at him in the film room this week. I'm excited about that. Just from a Commander standpoint, they are not quite as healthy. Brian Robinson, their starting running back, is going to be out for this one. He has a hamstring injury. He's been working back from. He didn't play last week either. Got a couple tackles on the injury report as well. Cornelius Lucas, he's been declared out. Andrew Wiley, their right tackle, is questionable, so he's the guy who will be matching up potentially with TJ Watt. I think he's actually going to play, but on the left side, it's going to be Brandon Coleman, who was a guy I liked during the draft process, but he is a rookie who's only played, a handful of snaps. He's gotten the last couple starts as well on the left side, but Alex Highsmith, that's going to be a huge matchup there. I think Highsmith looked really, really good since he came back from injury, granted against some poor competition, in my opinion. I think Tyron Smith is pretty much over the hill for the Jets, and then they were rolling out just nobody, a turnstile really, last week against the Giants, and he had like career high numbers. But this is the matchup that Highsmith is going to have to dominate. I'm sure that Kingsbury is going to give their tackle some help, like most teams do, but this is a matchup that he's going to have to kind of take it to the rook a little bit. The other kind of interesting note here is like it kind of tells you how the Commanders kind of view themselves among NFL circles right now. They made a splash move to go out and acquire Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore is not going to play. He was dealing with a hamstring injury. With the Saints, he's missed a little bit of time. It turns out it's not a Devontae Adams situation where he gets traded and magically the soft tissue injury heals itself. Lattimore is actually really hurt, so he's going to miss this one and he won't play. So that's really good. I think that they made this trade for Lattimore because the way that Dan Quinn likes to play, and we can go ahead and start off talking about kind of the elements of this matchup, but the way Dan Quinn likes to play is wants to play man coverage. That's what he wants to do. He wants to be in nickel all the time, and you got to have guys to cover on the outside. And they don't really have that right now, and Lattimore's always been kind of regarded as like a press man specialist, but the Steelers are going to avoid him, so that's a good thing. I think that definitely helps them in this matchup. I really want to start off talking about just the Commanders offense versus the Steelers defense, really just because it's like a strength on strength type of matchup. And I think that this is kind of, in my opinion, it makes it kind of the game of the week. You look at all the numbers, man, like the Commanders like extremely high in pretty much like every important metric. They're number 1 in EPA per play. They're number 3 in success rate. Let me see what they are, like points per drive. I thought it was something like outrageous. Yeah, they're first in points per drive. I mean, they've moved the ball pretty much at will on mostly everyone this season. I think their lowest scoring game this year is like 18 points or something like that. So this is kind of the start of the gauntlet where we're going to find out like just how good this Steelers defense is. They got everything humming, man. Like you watch this offense and like I honestly can't believe my eyes because I still like a part of me thinks that this group isn't like overly talented, even though they've gotten bounce back seasons from guys like Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler, who I personally thought were washed. And then I think their offensive line is even better than I anticipated. But I just took like a massive L on Cliff Kingsbury. Like I didn't like the hire. And honestly, like the Commanders, they didn't even want to hire Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury. They missed out on other guys and had to basically quote unquote settle for this kind of group. But they brought in Anthony Lynn. The marriage between the pass game and the run game looks fantastic right now. They're still doing a lot of Cliff stuff. They're heavy RPO. Like you see a lot of tempo. They're in the gun like 90% of the time, utilizing Jaden's ability to kind of get a +1 advantage in the run game. But their run game stuff is like, it's so cool, man. Like it honestly is like one of the coolest things I've seen all season. Like they're the number 1 gap scheme rushing team in the NFL from a schematic standpoint. They run literally everything under the sun. I actually think sometimes they run too much stuff because Cliff is oftentimes trying to ride that line between like being innovative and putting too much on his players' plate, in my opinion. But they do a lot of stuff, man. Like they run dart, they run power, they run trap, G lead, pin and pull, buck sweep, anything that you can. I mean, anything and everything. And then also like the majority of the runs that they do like has a read element to it. And of course, like that's kind of Jaden kind of controlling one of the edge defenders, the C gap player, if you will, because of his threat to kind of take off. And really with Jaden specifically, it's not just about like what he does in like the design run game or as like a read player. It's more about what he does as a scrambler. I tweeted out a stat earlier this week. It seems like it's kind of caught on because I've seen it multiple places now. But just about like how good Jaden's been as a scrambler this year. Just a really unique player in terms of like his speed. He is an NFL high 327 rushing yards and 17 first downs, tops in the NFL. But the good news is, like the Steelers defense have only allowed 15 yards and 1 first down on scrambles all season. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think the Steelers have yet to kind of play this type of athlete. I mean, Jaden's in the elite tier in terms of athleticism at the quarterback position. But I also think like this is a good matchup for the Steelers to see what their investments are going to bring to them on the defensive side of the ball. You go out and you spend a ton of money on Patrick Queen and free agency, right? 3 years, 39 million or something like that. These are games where you go out and prioritize a guy like Queen because his ability to run and like Jaden's extremely fast. The way he, can creep through these crevices in the pocket, like you have to maintain like really good gap and rush lane integrity. But having a guy like Queen, not to mention having a guy like Peyton Wilson that you invested a third round pick in, having those guys on the field is going to be a really helpful thing for them, not just as it pertains to trying to corral him as a scrambler, because that's like, it's just backbreaking. Like the amount of times I've seen this dude scramble and just, take off and get explosives after his first or second read isn't there. It's backbreaking. But the Commanders are also like they're fourth, I think, in screen rate this season. And then they're 10th in success rate in screens. So it's like they run a lot of them and they're pretty good at it, which, again, you look at the skill position players, and Terry McLaurin's obviously been a guy who's been really good for a very long time. But like some of the other guys, I don't think really had their reputation as being this type of player. But it's a lot of RPOs. I think Cliff has done a really good job simplifying the offense for Daniels. It seems like I know the stat gets thrown around all the time on Twitter about like first read rate and quarterbacks that throw to their first read so often. But it just feels like on film when you watch him, like Daniels is playing a lot. He's playing so much faster than your typical rookie. And the first or second read is almost always open. And if it's not open, like he's not doing it. I think for young quarterbacks, sometimes they are either too hesitant because they want to play in the pocket. They don't want to take off too early, or they're taking off without letting things develop. Jaden's been like trending just riding that line, man. Like he knows exactly when he needs to get up and out of the pocket and just trust his legs, trust his athleticism. The Steelers are going to have some advantages from a talent standpoint. Like I said, on the edges, I think that those two, the two tackles are kind of, I think that Coleman was a guy that I like coming out of the draft, but like for him to already be playing, in my opinion, is tough. He had some good moments last week against Brian Burns, but I think, for one, I think Highsmith is probably in that same tier as Burns as a rusher, maybe even a little bit better, depending on who you'd ask. But these are games where like those guys are just going to have to win their one-on-ones whenever they get them. And Cliff is going to probably do some things in order to, like, he's been good about like adding chip help, and, they're running a completely different offense than the one he ran from a formation standpoint than the one he ran in Arizona. It's not nearly as many like open edges. He's using a lot of like tighter splits, creating extra gaps. They're a little bit heavier in their personnel too. Like they do a lot of cool stuff in terms, like they'll utilize, just from a formation standpoint, they do a lot of pony. They'll play two backs at one time. They do some quads formations. It's just a lot of it's like really simple stuff that you've seen around the NFL for a long time. I mean, nothing's necessarily new. It's just the way that they get to these things that makes it really interesting. And, I think for me personally, like this is just one of those matchups where I'm like, I can't wait to see it, because they've looked at times this year like unstoppable. And the Steelers defense, obviously if we think that they're going to be, a threat in the AFC, this defense has to play like very, very good ball. And we're going to get a chance to see like, if they're up to the task. I think it's going to be a really fun matchup between McLaurin and Joey Porter Jr. McLaurin is a guy who plays bigger than his size. He's good at pretty much everything, tracks the ball extremely well, good in contested catch situations. He's a good route runner, dangerous with the ball in his hands. I'm excited to see what him and Porter's battle looks like. I'm sure that Porter's going to want to try to get in his face, try to press when they can, and different things. I think that'll be a good on good type of matchup. I think if you're looking for a formula on how to kind of slow this unit down a little bit, I mean, I think it really starts with, obviously stopping the run, because this run game is like I said, it's got a lot of layers to it, man. They're going to need to be better than they were against the Giants on Monday Night Football. And then it sounds really simple, but you have to almost like you have to make some of these other guys beat you. Like I said, Ertz, Eckler, those guys are having good seasons. Y'all know that I like Noah Brown. If you've been around for the channel, y'all know that I like Noah Brown a good amount. I think he's a good player, but at the same time, you kind of need to make sure that you contain Jaden on these scrambles. Make sure that he doesn't throw the ball over your head too. He's a really dangerous like touch thrower of the ball. And then you want to make some of these other guys beat you. Like Noah Brown, if he goes off for 5 catches, 100 yards, and scores a touchdown, like it is what it is. Like you're gonna have to live with those decisions. If Zacchaeus beats you for multiple third down plays, okay, like that's just something you're gonna have to live with. I think the big thing is like making sure Terry McLaurin doesn't get off, especially like in the red zone. He's been really good this season in the red zone. I think he has like 6 touchdowns, I think, or something like that already. So yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna have to pressure. Jaden's been good, like he's been really good against the blitz. He's been good against like everything. Like I said, this offense really hasn't struggled very much anyway. But this is a game where like the pass rush is gonna have to really come alive and have a really good game. I'm interested to see like what they've got cooked up for them schematically, because I don't think that they're going to be able to just come out and just do some of the things they've done this season, be really vanilla, really predictable on the back end. I think that will be a bad decision. But overall, like it's a fun matchup from the other side of the ball too. The Steelers, like I said, their defense like top 10, and this matchup on that side of the ball has been getting a ton of attention. But the Commanders defense has been playing better ball over the past month. They've been much better about keeping the ball in front of them. They were getting just bombed away in the first month of the season with explosive plays. They've been a little bit better. But having said that, still not very good against the run. What do the Steelers like to do on offense? Run the ball. Najee Harris coming off 3 straight 100-yard games. And this is a great matchup for them, just to be completely honest. Like you just look at the front matchups and like the guys that are going to be playing in this one. I think the Steelers have like advantages that they're going to be able to pick at really across the board in this one. I think for me personally, like one of the things that's really interesting is like Dan Quinn, like he's a guy who he does not like to play like 3 linebackers. So they play 2 linebackers to pretty much everything. So even when teams are in like 12 personnel, the Steelers play 12 personnel a ton. Even when they're, in 12 personnel, Quinn's defense will be in nickel. So that means they're running out 5 defensive backs out there. And I think that's particularly interesting because, one, like I said, the Steelers 12th in usage rate for 12 personnel this season. So 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, but they're 5th in success rate running the ball. The Commanders 28th in success rate defending the run out of 12 personnel. Thought that was an interesting thing to bring up. I mean, it's really interesting this week because you got to think about it. Their 5th defensive back is, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. It's Noah I from the Dolphins, former first-round pick. He's been playing in the nickel while they've slid Mikey Sanders still on the outside. But you got to think about it. Like the Steelers' 12 personnel is Darnell Washington. Like he's the second tight end coming in. So you're bringing in a defensive back who's 200 pounds or whatever. The Steelers are bringing in a 300-pound tight end who's 6'7". Like this game and this defense, this is the reason why you go draft a guy like Darnell Washington. Like this is the entire premise behind Arthur Smith's scheme. You want to get heavy, and if teams don't want to bring a third linebacker or bump an extra safety down to the box, like you have to dominate this game in the trenches. And I think they have a good advantage too. Even the defensive line or some of the edge players, they're not necessarily like known as like run defenders like Dante Fowler. He's always had like more of a reputation. As a pass rusher, I think Dorian Armstrong is a solid player. They have some players that I like up front. Johnny Newton had a really strong game a couple weeks ago against the Bears. Of course, like most players are kind of teeing off against the Bears offensive line these days. But Newton, if you remember, and you were around for the draft cycle, he was actually my number 1 ranked defensive player in this class, was dealing with some injuries, slid all the way to the second round. But he's looked very, very good over the past couple weeks. So I'm interested to see. That'll be a fun matchup between him and Herbig, him and the guards. That'll be fun. But I think the Steelers are going to have to run the ball very well. This Commanders defense, like I said, it's nowhere on par like with their offense. I mean, they're 24th in EPA per play. Let me see what they are in success rate. I know they were near the bottom of the league. They're 30th in success rate. I think that this is a game. I know like people get sensitive to this on Twitter. I did not realize that, but this is a game where I think the Steelers are going to have to score points. Like, not saying that the Commanders are going to go put up 40 on the Steelers defense. I don't think that's going to be the case. But I don't know if they're going to be able to slow this unit down just to like hold them to 16 or 17 points. I mean, if they do, that's a great sign. And anything could happen. But I just think this is a game where they're going to have to put up some points. And like this is a matchup where they absolutely have to win, man. Even the Commanders linebackers, like Frankie Louvu, a dangerous blitzer, and he's good like at like shooting gaps and getting to the backfield and making splash plays. Not a coverage guy like at all. Struggles in coverage. Bobby Wagner, same thing. Like you get him near the line of scrimmage, fit the run, the dude can do it all day long. He'll be doing it until he's probably 40. Having said that, if you can throw the ball over the middle of the field, I know that's not Russ's specialty, and they've been kind of avoiding that area for the majority of the season. But I'm just telling you, like Wagner, like he hasn't been able to cover in like 3 years, man. Like he's just not the same athlete in space. So you can throw the ball over the middle against this team, I think, if you wanted to lean into some play action out of those 12 personnel looks, especially after you've already kind of like established the run a little bit and started gashing them a little bit in that regard. And then on the outside too, we'll see what Mike Williams' snap count looks like. But I do think he's going to play a decent amount in this one. It wouldn't surprise me if they at least tried to throw a go ball to him, a fade, a 50-50 ball, just to get him, included in the group and see what he's got. But I will say, like, Sanders still good player out of Michigan, but he was like a nickel only really in college, and he's a smaller dude. So that's the thing too. Like if he's going to be over there with Mike Williams is basically like a big tree. He's like 6'4", 230 pounds, whatever, 220 pounds, whatever. You're going to want to try to take a shot to him. And I think that's kind of the entire idea of them trading for him. You want to go get two guys that can win on the vertical plane, can win and above the rim. And Mike Williams has like a reputation for being one of the better ball winners of his era. I think they're going to try to do some of those things this week. Like I said, Washington's been doing a much better job defending the pass over the past month or so and keeping things in front. But I still think that, their corner's a little suspect. I think that's why they traded for Lattimore. The other guy, Benjamin St-Juste, I don't know, man. I don't think he can really play, to be honest with you. I think he really struggles to get in and out of his breaks, especially on like curls, comebacks, things like that. You can get him. I think that they can double move him as well. But Pickens, I'm sure that they're going to try to take their one-on-ones on the outside with him as well. But we'll see. I mean, I think for me, it's going to be really interesting to see like what Washington tries to do, because one of the things I've actually really liked about what Quinn has done this season is I've kind of always known Dan Quinn as like this Seattle guy, which we'll talk about. This Seattle guy who has like really his way of playing. I watched like the Dallas defense kind of fall apart as the season went on last year. Like I just didn't feel like he adjusted. This year has been a little bit different. Like their coverage Rolodex has been different. Like every week they've done some, like he's always kind of leaned into like cover two as a change up, if you will. But like their game plans look different week to week for me. And he has shown the ability to adjust because he doesn't have the dudes on the outside that he's used to having and that he really wants. So I'm interested to see what they do, if they try to play with a light box and let the Steelers run, or if they try to roll a safety down there. I think he's going to play nickel to 12, probably not 13, but maybe. We'll see. They haven't played a lot of 13 personnel this season to really get a good sample size, but I'm interested to see how he responds to some of the Steelers formational tendencies. And if they're willing to live in single high and trust their dudes on the outside, I think it could be a really big game for George Pickens, though. Like they don't have anyone on that side of the roster to cover him one-on-one, and if they sell out to stop the run, it's really going to be the same formula we've kind of seen. They want to run the ball on early downs, utilize play action, chuck the ball down the field, give their guys chances. To me, this is like a heavy personnel day where you want to do those things, and I think they've got some matchups that they could potentially exploit. So, be interested to see. It is, these are familiar names, maybe not to everybody, like guys that we haven't seen play the Steelers in a while, but, Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, like those guys, they've got some guys on that staff that are pretty familiar with Russell Wilson. So they're going to know like the things that he likes. Not that everybody doesn't know what like Russ likes to do. He's been around a long time, but they're going to know like Russ's tendency, like what he likes, what he doesn't like, and things like that too. So I think that adds another element to this game. Of course, Willie Gay, former Steelers defensive back, is a assistant coach for the Commanders as well. So I don't know. It's cool. I think the Commanders have a really underrated coaching staff. I think it'll make this game a lot more enjoyable. And like I said, the thing that I was most excited about really as we head into the second half of the season is like, I just really want to see like how this team stacks up against the better teams in the league. I think they're going to play a lot of really good offenses coming up, and I think it's going to tell us a lot about where this team is, what their chances are headed into the postseason. You think about Jaden, some of the athletic, they're different passers and they like to attack in a lot of different ways. But like in terms of like athleticism and their rushing ability and their scrambling ability, this is kind of a good kind of, I don't want to say warm up as because that sounds disrespectful, but for Lamar Jackson next week as well. It is kind of interesting because the Steelers have Tomlin has a really good record against rookie quarterbacks, but they did lose twice last year to rookies, CJ Stroud. And like I've tried to burn a hole in my brain thinking about that Dorian Thompson Robinson game. But they did lose twice last year to rookies. We'll see if they can get on the right track on this one. But, it is going to be interesting because the Steelers, they have some division games coming up that are pretty important. And then also the Commanders next week have a really short turnaround for the Eagles on Thursday night. So I don't think either one of these two teams would be foolish enough to start like kind of peeking ahead, but we'll see. Also, there's a chance of some rain in the forecast. So that's another thing. I think it's like a 60% chance of rain on Sunday. So a lot of stuff to look forward to. I know there's a lot of long-winded. I just kind of got lost in the tape, man, this week. I had a lot of fun studying this Commanders offense. They do a lot of unique stuff, but I'm interested to see, what the Steelers have to stop it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. As always, I really appreciate the continued support for the channel. If you miss any of the videos that we did early in this week, gives you something to do before game time, before kickoff on Sunday. On Monday, I did kind of like my midseason recap for the Steelers, really long form kind of podcasty type video. On Wednesday, James Foster from the 33rd team he and I went over some NFL draft stuff, talked a bunch of prospects at some positions of need potentially for the Steelers. Just kind of an early primer, if you will. Really enjoyed that. I'm super excited about the draft cycle as well. And then if you want like my full like kind of thoughts, rants, whatever on Mike Williams, Preston Smith, there's also a video on that. So a lot of content up on the channel in case you guys haven't had the chance to hit that stuff yet. But again, just don't forget to drop me your score predictions, all of that good stuff. And I will check you guys next time. Peace and love.